My brother sneered across the dinner table, "You don't fit in here." I chuckled, then bought the $5 million restaurant, dismissed him from his job, and claimed ownership of their entire world. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 38, and my own family left me standing without a place at their lavish dinner party, suggesting I'd be better off grabbing a burger at a fast food joint. Before I share how I ended up owning the restaurant, the company my brother worked for, and the very building they called home, I'd love to know where you're reading this from. Drop your location in the comments. It helps to know my audience. This all unfolded at the Pinnacle in Chicago. If you're local, you'll know the name. It's a five-star venue where power brokers seal deals over prime rib and celebrities duck paparazzi in secluded booths. Reservations are booked months, sometimes a year in advance. So when my brother Nathan called to invite me to celebrate his promotion to vice president, I was stunned. Nathan and his wife Rebecca had spent years pushing me away. I was the embarrassing older brother, the working-class outcast, the janitor. I didn't belong in their polished, elite circle. Yet an invitation to the city's most exclusive restaurant felt like a possible olive branch. Maybe they were ready to mend our fractured family ties. I wore my best suit, old, frayed at the cuffs, but clean. I drove my beat-up pickup truck, perpetually dusty with a dented fender, and handed the keys to a valet who eyed me like I'd wandered in from another dimension. Stepping inside, I was greeted by glittering chandeliers, soft piano melodies, and waitstaff gliding silently. Across the room, I spotted them. Nathan, sharp in a $1,000 suit, and Rebecca, radiant in a designer gown, her jewels sparkling. They sat at a grand table with distinguished guests. But as I approached, a cold realization hit me. The table had 10 chairs. All 10 were occupied, no seat for me. I stood on the periphery of their laughter and clinking glasses. Nathan finally glanced up, a sly, triumphant grin spreading across his face. The table went quiet, all eyes on me. Then Rebecca, with a voice dripping with venom, leaned forward and said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. There must have been a mistake. Maybe a fast food joint would suit someone like you better." The silence that followed was suffocating. Every gaze in that corner of the restaurant pinned me down, waiting for me to crack, shout, or slink away in shame. Instead, I laughed. It started as a low rumble in my chest, then grew louder, echoing through the restaurant. It wasn't the laugh of a broken man, it was the laugh of someone holding all the aces. Nathan's grin faded, Rebecca's face paled. And that's when the real performance began. To understand that night, you need to know the past 25 years. You need to know about Sarah. My real life, the one I was meant to live, ended when I was 13. We were an ordinary family. Mom, Dad, me, Nathan 5, and Sarah barely 2. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, living in a cozy house with a backyard, sharing dinners every evening. Then came the call. A stormy night, a slick road, and a drunk driver veering into oncoming traffic. My parents' car was hit head-on. The crash made headlines across the country. In an instant, I was no longer a kid. I was an orphan responsible for 2 younger siblings. The world turned cold and unforgiving. The life insurance barely covered the house. I quit school. My childhood was gone. My new reality was a whirlwind of playing parent and provider. I learned to cook, clean, change diapers, and help with homework, but I was lost. Nathan was young enough to cope, needing only food and a warm bed. Sarah, though, was delicate, a sweet girl with wide, curious eyes. At 4, she fell ill. It began with a cough, then a fever. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia, a dangerous condition. She needed hospitalization, specialized drugs, and constant care. I took her to the public hospital, the only one we could afford. It was chaos, patients moaning in corridors, the air thick with disinfectant and despair. We waited hours. Sarah's tiny body burned in my arms, her breath shallow. I pleaded with nurses, receptionists, anyone who'd listen. They gave me the same weary look. "We'll get to you when we can. Everyone's sick here." Meanwhile, I saw wealthy patients whisked through a side entrance to private rooms, doctors rushing to their side. Their money bought them a fast pass through the misery. We finally got a bed in a crowded ward, but it was too late. The illness had spread too far. I held Sarah as she slipped away, her last breath a faint, trembling sigh. The world went quiet. Amid the hospital's chaos, I clutched her lifeless body. All I could hear was the deafening echo of my failure. I'd let her down. Money, or the lack of it, had taken her. That night, holding her worn teddy bear, I made a vow in the stillness of our humble home. I swore Nathan would never know that kind of pain. I'd build a fortress of wealth to shield him from hardship. I'd sacrifice everything to give him the life we'd lost. And I did. For 25 years, my life wasn't mine, it was Nathan's. I worked 3 jobs at once. By day, I cleaned offices, the scent of bleach clinging to me. At dusk, I hauled materials on construction sites until my body screamed. At night, I guarded empty buildings, the silence broken only by the rustle of pages as I studied. I devoured books on business, finance, and investments during those quiet hours. For decades, I slept 3 hours a night. My hands grew rough with calluses marked by cuts and blisters. Every penny I earned beyond food and rent went to Nathan. He attended top private schools while I ate instant noodles. He played football. I bought him a sleek BMW at 16, not a clunker like mine. I wanted him to feel proud, not ashamed. I paid for his elite business school, working extra shifts and selling our parents' last possessions to cover the crushing tuition. He never asked where the money came from, he just took it. When he graduated, I covered the down payment on his luxury condo in a gleaming high-rise. When he married Rebecca, a banker's daughter, I funded their extravagant $250,000 wedding. I stood at the back in a rented suit that didn't fit, watching my brother step into the life I'd built for him, a life I could never join. He was living my dream, built on the ashes of my own existence. But here's the secret I kept for 15 years. When Nathan started college, I began investing my meager savings, a few $1,000s scraped together. I applied what I'd learned in those lonely nights guarding empty buildings. My early bets were small, risky, but my desperate logic paid off. Then it paid off again. I had a knack for seeing patterns others overlooked. I reinvested every dollar. While I scrubbed floors by day, my hidden portfolio grew. $10,000, then $100,000, then $1 million. I started buying businesses, a small catering service, a cleaning company, then bigger ventures like real estate and tech startups. 15 years ago, I bought the Pinnacle. I acquired the parent company that owned it, along with a portfolio of upscale hospitality venues. It was part of my empire, now worth over $78 million by the night of that dinner. But I never changed my life. I kept my janitor job, or at least the appearance of it. I drove the same old truck, wore thrift store clothes, and lived in the same cheap apartment. It was a deliberate experiment. I wanted to see who'd value me, Ethan Cole, the man, despite thinking I had nothing. Who'd show kindness to the janitor. Who'd see beyond the grime on my hands. Almost no one did, certainly not Nathan or Rebecca. As Nathan climbed the corporate ladder, a path I'd quietly paved through strategic investments in his company, they distanced me further. Thanksgiving invites stopped. They were always traveling. Christmas became a gift card in the mail. When Nathan's bank colleagues were around, they made excuses. "My brother's very private," they'd say. I was their shameful secret. The manager of the Pinnacle, Robert, was one of the few who knew the truth. Years ago, he was a struggling night guard I met while working security. He was jobless, his wife sick, sleeping in his car. I shared my meal and gave him a few $100s to get by. Later, when I had the means, I hired him. His loyalty was to me, Ethan Cole, the man who shared a sandwich, not the millionaire who signed his checks. He was my one true ally. The breaking point came 3 months before that fateful dinner. The cleaning company I worked for was bought out, and my job was cut. For the first time in decades, I was unemployed. I decided on one final test. I called Nathan, using my most broken tone. I told him I'd lost my job and was short on rent. I asked to borrow a few $100s. The silence on the line was icy. "Ethan," he said, his voice tight with irritation, "we can't help. Things are tight for us too." Tight. He earned $800,000 a year. "Maybe look into some public assistance programs," he added, his tone dripping with scorn. That night, Nathan and Rebecca sent me a gift, an ornate, expensive-looking desk clock. The note read, "Thinking of you during this tough time. Hope this brightens your place." It was a strange, impersonal gift. I thanked them but grew suspicious. I took it to a specialist. Hidden inside was a high-end, voice-activated recorder. They weren't just thinking of me, they were spying on me. I placed the clock on my shelf and let it record. I spoke aloud to myself about my struggles, my fears, my despair. I was performing for an audience of 2. A week later, Nathan called to invite me to the Pinnacle. "We want to celebrate my promotion, Ethan," he said, his voice thick with false warmth. "We want you there. Let's put the past behind us." I knew it was a setup. I knew it was a trap, but I agreed. It was time to end the masquerade. Sitting in my modest apartment, I looked at Sarah's photo by my bed. Her innocent smile steadied me. "Almost there, little sister," I whispered. "I'm about to honor the vow I made you, and they'll never forget this night." The test was over. The results were in. Judgment was coming. The weeks before the dinner felt like the calm before a storm. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Beneath, the pressure was building, and I held the lever. My first call after accepting Nathan's invite was to my real desk, not the rickety kitchen table in my apartment, but the one in my private downtown office Nathan didn't know existed. I called Jessica, my PR manager, sharp, relentless, and fiercely loyal. "Jessica," I said, my voice low, "I'm going to a dinner at the Pinnacle in 3 weeks, my brother's event. I need a full media package ready to launch when I signal. Audio, financial records, the whole story. Leak it to the most aggressive online outlet you know. Make it go viral." A pause. "Ethan, what's happening?" she asked, concern in her voice. "The experiment's done," I said. "It's time to reveal the results." She didn't need more explanation. She knew my story. "It's handled," she replied. Next, I dealt with the desk clock, Nathan and Rebecca's gift. I'd been careful, speaking openly about my financial woes and loneliness, painting a picture of a man on the edge. I wanted to see how far they'd go. The clock was delivered. In my office, headphones on, I listened to its recordings from their lavish home. The audio was crystal clear. I heard them discuss me. "He's a liability," Nathan said, irritation in his tone. "He called asking for money again. What if my colleagues see him? What if he shows up at work?" Then Rebecca, her voice cold. "We need to fix this, Nathan, permanently. My father's been asking questions. He says a man's judged by his family. We can't have a broke janitor dragging us down." My jaw tightened. I kept listening. "I've researched some places," Rebecca said. "State facilities, there's one upstate decent enough. If we can get him declared mentally unfit, we can take power of attorney, sell his little apartment, and use the funds for his care. It'd be a kindness, really. He's clearly unstable." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just neglect or embarrassment. It was a calculated scheme to have me committed, strip me of my home, and erase me to protect their status. They weren't just cutting me out, they wanted to lock me away. The last shred of familial loyalty I had died. This wasn't about broken bonds anymore. It was about survival. It was about justice. I saved the audio and sent it to Jessica with one note: add this to the package. Call it the compassion plan. Days later, I ran one final test. I called Nathan again. "Nathan," I said, my voice trembling, "I hate to ask, but I'm in a bad spot. Unemployment hasn't come through. I might lose my place." His sigh was heavy, performative. "Ethan, I told you we can't help. Rebecca and I have obligations." "I know," I said. I feel like I'm losing it sometimes." I was feeding them the script they wanted. "You need help, Ethan," he said, his tone serious but predatory. "Maybe see a professional. There are state programs for people like you." "Thanks, Nathan," I said softly. "See you at dinner." "Yeah," he replied, his voice warming. "It'll be great, a real celebration." I hung up. The anger was gone, replaced by something cold and resolute. The plan was set. I didn't fuss over what to wear for the dinner. I spent the time making 2 final calls. First to Robert at the Pinnacle. "Robert," I said, "tonight's the night. I'll arrive at 7. Treat me like a stranger, as always, until my signal." "What's the signal?" he asked. "You'll know," I said. "And prep my private dining room, the one with conference call setup. Also, tip off some paparazzi you know. Tell them a major scandal involving a banking VP is about to break at the Pinnacle. Don't mention me." "With pleasure, Mr. Cole," he said, satisfaction in his voice. My final call was to Mr. Whitaker, CEO of the investment group that owned Nathan's bank. I'd kept Whitaker on when I bought the company. He was ethical, dependable, and knew who I was. He reported to me. "Martin," I said, "I need a favor. Be at the Pinnacle tonight at 7:30. Have dinner at the bar. I'll send you a text. When you get it, walk to my brother's table and say exactly what it says. Can you do that?" "Ethan, is everything okay?" he asked. "It's about to be," I said. "Just be there." "I will," he said, no further questions. The stage was ready. The players were in place. The script was written. I visited my parents' and Sarah's graves. It was a cold, gray afternoon. I brought no flowers, just stood there, hands in my pockets, the wind cutting through my thin jacket. I wasn't the scared 13-year-old anymore, nor the helpless man who watched his sister die. I'd built the fortress I'd promised. And my brother, the one I'd built it for, was trying to tear me down. He thought I was a burden. He was about to learn I was the foundation. I looked at Sarah's name carved in stone. "Tonight," I said. "This is for you." The drive to the Pinnacle was oddly serene. City lights blurred past my truck's windows, its engine humming familiarly. For most, a night like this would be nerve-wracking. For me, it felt like coming home, not to the restaurant, but to a moment of truth. The years of living a double life were ending. I pulled up to the valet. The young man in a crisp red jacket glanced at my truck, then me, with a mix of surprise and disdain. He probably thought I was delivering supplies. "I have a reservation," I said quietly, handing over the keys. "Under Cole," he smirked. "Sure, just leave it there, I'll find a spot." He gestured to a corner of the lot far from the sleek luxury cars. Inside, the city's noise faded, replaced by the hum of wealth. Robert stood at the host's stand. Our eyes met briefly, his professional mask slipping for a moment to show loyalty before returning to a polite blank. He nodded slightly as he would to any stranger and turned to another guest. Perfect. I scanned the room and found them, Nathan's party, loud and self-assured, masters of their domain. Nathan was mid-story, gesturing grandly. Rebecca laughed, her diamonds catching the light. They looked like a glossy ad for success. I crossed the restaurant, each step feeling like a mile. Diners' eyes followed me, my suit too worn, my shoes too plain, my presence a glitch in their perfect world. I could feel their judgment. He doesn't belong. As I neared Nathan's table, I saw his expression shift. His smile wavered, replaced by a smug grin. He was ready to humiliate me before his elite circle. I stood there waiting for his move. He let the silence stretch, relishing my discomfort, letting his guests, his clients, his world, stare at the pitiful brother. Then Rebecca struck, her words sharp. "Maybe a fast food joint would suit someone like you better." The silence was heavy, laced with cruel amusement and second-hand embarrassment. I looked at the table, pity in one woman's eyes, glee in a man's sneer. Nathan looked victorious, thinking he'd crushed me, cemented his status by sacrificing me. I thought of Sarah, her small hand in mine, the hospital's desperation. I'd built an empire to avoid this feeling of worthlessness. Yet here was my brother serving it to me in front of everyone. The pain was sharp, a blade in my chest. For a moment, the broken 13-year-old resurfaced, wanting to scream, cry, run. Then a new thought hit. They don't know. They were mocking the man who owned the ground they stood on, plotting to steal from the man who owned their building, trying to deem incompetent the man who could buy their lives 100 times over. The irony was staggering. The absurdity was overwhelming, and that's when I laughed. It wasn't planned, it burst out, born of pain, anger, and 25 years of sacrifice. It started as a chuckle, shaking my shoulders, then grew into a booming roar that silenced the restaurant. Conversation stopped. Forks froze. Every eye turned to the shabby man laughing like a conqueror. Nathan's smugness vanished, replaced by confusion, then fear. This wasn't the reaction he'd scripted. I wasn't supposed to laugh, I was supposed to break. Wiping a tear, I met his gaze and smiled genuinely. "Good one, little brother," I said, my voice clear. "But I'll stay. In fact, I'd prefer some privacy." I caught Robert's eye across the room and gave a subtle nod. It was time. Robert approached, not rushing like a manager handling a problem, but with the calm reverence of a servant before a king. Each step dismantled Nathan and Rebecca's world. He stopped a few feet away, in full view of the dining room, and bowed deeply. "Mr. Cole," he said, his voice carrying, "I apologize for the delay. Your private dining room is ready, sir." Nathan's face drained of color. I saw the gears turning, confusion giving way to dread. Rebecca's mouth fell open. "What?" Nathan stammered. "What did you call him?" I turned to him, my smile unwavering. "My name, Nathan, Mr. Cole. It holds a bit more weight here than you think." I stepped closer to the table. The guests shrank back, as if my worn suit were toxic. "You see, Robert," I said, my voice ringing out, "I love what you've done with the place. The new decor is excellent. The wine selection is top-notch. I knew you were right for the job when I promoted you." Nathan's eyes widened. "You promoted him?" "Naturally," I said. "I own the Pinnacle. The whole hospitality group, actually, bought it 15 years ago. It's one of my steadiest investments." A woman at the table gasped. Rebecca shook her head as if she could deny reality. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible. You're a janitor." "I was," I said gently. "Among other things, it was honest work. It paid for important things, like your tuition, Nathan's BMW, the down payment on your condo, your wedding." I counted them off on my fingers. "That was a steep bill, by the way, the $250,000 one." Nathan looked ill, pale, and sweating, eyes darting for an escape. But he was trapped in his own spotlight. "That's not all," I continued, savoring it more than I should. "I believe in diversification. Hospitality's great, but real estate's solid. That's why I own your building, all 50 floors." I paused. "You're not just my brother, Nathan, you're my tenant." My phone buzzed, Jessica's text. The package was live. I typed a message to Whitaker, who sat at the bar, sipping scotch, watching calmly. Martin approach, say, Nathan, we need to discuss. Mr. Cole shared disturbing details about your plan to seize his assets. Clear your desk, you're fired. I hit send. And finance, I said, pocketing my phone. Tricky but lucrative if you control the board. Like owning the investment firm that owns the bank where a certain VP thinks he's untouchable. Right on cue, Whitaker stood and walked toward the table, a commanding figure in a suit worth more than my truck. His arrival turned the family drama into a corporate execution. He stopped beside Nathan, ignoring the others. Nathan, he said sternly, we need to discuss. Mr. Cole shared disturbing details about your plan to seize his assets. Clear your desk, you're fired. Nathan gaped, words failing him. Then a new sound filled the room, phones buzzing and chiming. Diners' screens lit up. A man's eyes widened as he read. A woman gasped, showing her phone to her husband. The story was out. Jessica's work was flawless. The headline was likely brutal. Bank VP humiliates secret billionaire brother, plots to have him committed. To seal it, I pulled a small speaker from my pocket. I'd been ready for this. Connecting it to my phone, I spoke. Rebecca, when you mentioned state facilities, calling it a kindness to have me declared unfit, I was touched by your concern. I pressed play. Rebecca's voice filled the silent restaurant, clear as day from the clock's recording. We need to fix this, Nathan, for good. If we can have him declared unfit, we can take power of attorney, sell his little apartment. It'd be a kindness, really. Rebecca gasped, recoiling as if struck. Nathan stared at the speaker, his face a portrait of defeat, but the show wasn't over. The doors burst open and camera flashes flooded the room. The paparazzi Robert had tipped off arrived, capturing the climax. They surged forward, snapping the disgraced couple and the unassuming man who'd unraveled them without raising his voice. I looked at Nathan and Rebecca, their perfect world collapsing, flashbulbs illuminating their shame. They'd tried to erase me. Instead, I'd made them the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. I turned to Robert, who stood by, quietly pleased. Robert, I said, escort my former tenants out, send a cleaning crew to their condo. I want it vacant by morning for renovations. Then to Whitaker. Martin, thank you for coming. He nodded. The board will be informed tomorrow. It'll be a clean break. I stood in the chaos I'd created, reporters shouting, diners staring, Nathan and Rebecca frozen. None of it touched me. I felt calm. The vow was fulfilled. I walked to my private dining room, leaving my brother's ruined life behind. The fallout was explosive, a global media frenzy. Jessica had outdone herself.